what's up, guys? How's it going? Travis and Susie here from the Wolf Hunters, and we got a reaction video for you. We got this link right here. You can find that link in the description box, which is below the video. There's a link. Click it and pick it. You can request music, movie scenes, comedy skits, live performances, documentary segments, and more for the Wolf Hunterz Reactions channel. Today's video is brought to you by Wolves Gaming, bringing us Ironwood Semblance is a Problem by Eruption Fang. Wolves Gaming says,
I am recommending this 4-year-old video just because it involves one of my favorite characters from Ruby, RWBY. And I'd like to hear your thoughts on this character or show that you may have not seen based on this video. And yes, I do plan to send more, including the song made for this character, for the character in this video. Thank you for reacting.
No, we haven't seen it, so we're going into this pretty blind.
So I want to talk about
wish us luck here. Go ahead, like and subscribe, hit that notification bell, and feel free to comment below. Right. This is your favorite character, right?
Is that?
Oh, goodness. Hold on. Favorite character.
One of the favorite characters. Okay. Favorite. Wait, real quick, before you go back there, what is semblance? Semblance is the word semblance means outward appearance or apparent form of something, especially when the reality is different. Oh. She tried to force her thoughts back into some semblance of order.
Does that mean like you could be dressed really nice but then be like crazy in your mind?
Outward appearance or apparent form of something.
Reality is different.
Especially when the reality is different. I would think so. Or I don't know. Hold on. Go down more.
More definitions?
Yeah. Wait, no, go down. All right. Outward and often a show.
Oh, I see.
Wait, put in RWBY. Maybe it's specific. A semblance is a power exhibited by certain characters. Oh, okay.
So that's different.
All right. So this seems like a specific.
Okay.
A specific, maybe because it's capitalized too. All right. Let's just try. We're gonna try our best here. Okay, but it is a problem. That's what this says. Subscribe. Like. All right. Let's do it.
So I want to talk about Ironwood. Don't worry, I have a lot of thoughts on him in general, but specifically I wanted to talk about his semblance in this video in a more casual format because it seems more relevant now than ever in the show. The reason I'm talking about his semblance as opposed to other characters is because Ironwood is a special case from a lot of different angles. The most prominent one being that the show has never talked about it. And that's a very big problem, considering it's what's objectively the main driving force for the reason he's acting the way he is. Ironwood's semblance was revealed during Rooster Teeth's online convention in between Volume 7 and Volume 8. Here they explain that his semblance, named Metal, allows him to strengthen his resolve, making him much more focused on carrying through with his decisions. Meaning if he's having a hard time opening a pickle jar, the more determined he is to open that pickle jar, it will help him make sure that he opens that goddamn pickle jar. Or, you know, if an extinction level threat comes after his kingdom and has to protect it to make sure humanity doesn't die, he'll do whatever it takes to make sure it never happens. Sound familiar? Of course it does. What doesn't sound familiar is the show ever mentioning or bringing up the fact that this is part of his character to begin with. So
that would be a problem. Wait, so if I'm picking this up, he has a semblance, which we learned is a power. If we're getting this wrong, you can help us, okay? which is
we're
a power.
learning.
Yeah.
We haven't seen it.
Yeah, we haven't seen this. We don't know anything, okay?
So don't roast us. Teach us.
Yes, and this is a reaction channel, so we try our best to have this be a fresh reaction.
Yeah.
So I know that sometimes people would have liked us to go on a search, but we try not to do that.
Yeah, it's not a review.
Yeah, we try not to do that because we're just reacting. This is the first time we've seen or heard anything regarding Ironwood or a semblance or that it's a problem, okay? Okay, so, or Ruby or anything like that. Anyway, so he has a semblance. That's part of his character, but no one knew about it at all, that it was a semblance that was making him make decisions until one of the creators of the character or show said that between a later volume. I think they said between volumes 7 and 8. So there's 8 volumes at this point before anyone has heard of meddle his semblance power.
It's just determination?
I think it's power or something, and then what it is that when he has to make a hard decision or has to do something hard, that it drives him to act in an effort to do that no matter what, no matter what the cost, he's gonna do the thing that he's supposed to do.
Okay.
I think.
Unless you actively follow the social media accounts and watch all of the behind-the-scenes panels where the writers choose to just casually reveal vital pieces of their characters' motivations, then you probably didn't know this was a thing either. And that's a huge problem. I mean, even the casual viewer likely isn't watching this video either, meaning there are a lot of people out there who have no idea that this is part of his character, and that's turned a lot of the audience against him. And if you pay attention, the whole turn of when people started to dislike Ironwood, or specifically the direction he was going as a character, was when they started to integrate his semblance into the story. Of course, it went undetected due to never bringing it up, but Ironwood's heel turn led all the people who saw him as a rational, level-headed leader who cared for the well-being of his people into seeing a psychopath with a gun, all because of this hidden element of his character. But regardless, there's one other thing about his semblance that's important to note. And it's that it's fucking terrible. Ironwood's semblance by no means helps his character in any way, both from an in and out of universe perspective.
Ooh, I like that
it only ever takes away from anything cool he might do, which almost happened when one of the writers used him pulling his arm out of Watts' trap as an example, only for another one of the writers to go on Twitter and backtrack that claim, saying that Ironwood's aura was broken and that it was not what allowed him to do that. It was all just his big dick energy. And yeah, you almost dropped the fucking ball there. Because most people already saw that scene as something of pure testosterone and alpha instincts. But then you actively went out of your way to minimize it, thinking that it somehow made it cooler. Shit like what Ironwood did was badass, and any answer other than just sheer willpower is the wrong one. And secondly, the semblance is just not very fitting of the type of person he is.
Wait, so they should have just rode with what the fans were like?
Sometimes it's just what it is. Sometimes you gotta roll with the interpretation that your audience is going with, or rather, like there's been shows that we've watched where we've been so excited about a character only for them to get like killed off of the show.
You're like,
and we're like, oh well, now I don't even want to watch the
Yeah.
show anymore, you know. And if they had maybe paid attention, I'm not talking about this show, I don't know anything about it, but if they had paid attention to what the audience was feeling, then maybe they would have done
or like if you're like, it was always meant to be that way, like, oh, okay, well, undo what it was always meant to be. You know what I mean? Make a change.
I mean, maybe perhaps, but it is their art.
Yeah.
So
is to begin with. Sure, a military general may need to be able to focus on a mission at hand and be able to carry out their duties. But what Ironwood's semblance does is it practically makes him tunnel vision. Such hyper-focus essentially blocks out all other possible ideas and solutions to his problems because he's become super hyper-focused on his one way of doing things.
So you talked about big D energy. So D is the the letter for what is that chart?
The disc test?
The disc test. I don't know if you guys have ever done it.
It means dominant. It means dominance.
But the D is very like laser focused, cares less about relationships and more about accomplishing the mission.
What Travis is talking about is a personality test called the disc test. And you're meant to take it when you're going to work with someone to see how you might have working chemistry together. And if you are a D on the disc test, then that means that you focus on the goal before the people, before your relationships. And so you're so hyper-focused on the goal that your relationships with others you kind of put them on the back burner. And so what you're saying is it sounds like his semblance does that only like super crazy, not even just like a normal person, but rather he doesn't even see maybe how his actions could affect others at all, because he's only focused on the goal.
And that's not great for a general to have, as often it's best to consider every single available option and determine from there which one is the best and where to take the plan if it needs to change on the fly. So you have to question why the writers gave him this semblance that actively works against the core of what he should be. But if you're thinking, that's fine, such narrow-sightedness is the perfect type of character trait to make an antagonist out of. Well, think again. Because yes, while it is a trait that is easy to give to a character that stands against the heroes, what makes Ironwood's case different is the fact that he can't control it. It's not part of his character naturally, but rather a symptom of his semblance. Much like Crow's bad luck, Ironwood's is passive, meaning it's always on. The James the audience has gotten to like and know is the James that's calm and living life normally because there's nothing pushing his semblance to extremes. This is the real him. But the batshit insane nuke mantle unless you give me penny Ironwood has been taken over by his semblance, and this does kind of explain the far reaches he's become in the show.
So now if you're thinking,
whew, thank goodness there's an actual explanation for what's happening to him, at least he's now a bit more sympathetic. Think again, because sympathy means nothing in this show. As I've brought up time and time again, because the show hasn't ever mentioned this, it makes the situation that much worse. Because when you start to look at things with this information in hand, you see that Ironwood is being antagonized for what is the equivalency of a mental disorder. The characters are going out of their way to vilify, dehumanize, and make an enemy out of Ironwood.
I wonder if there's any symbolism there between the white hand and black hand. The kind of like two sides,
like light and darkness.
Yeah.
I
don't know.
Wait, take it back
Yin
like
yang.
5 seconds.
Good and evil.
Okay.
The characters are going out of their way to vilify, dehumanize, and make an enemy out of Ironwood because of his stubbornness, not addressing the fact that he's lost control over himself in a very literal sense. Can you imagine if the characters turned on Crow and started treating him like a villain because of his bad luck was getting on their wrong side? People would be outraged. It's not in his control. What do you want him to do about it? And the same thing goes for Ironwood. He may be able to drive and control the truck the majority of the time, but once it's out of control, there's nothing he can do to stop it. It's a very simple aspect of his character that, if ever brought up, would have allowed the audience to empathize with what he was going through more. Seeing him lose control would have been a sad sight instead of a confusingly frustrating one. They easily could have added a line by Winter or any of the Aesops earlier in the story expressing worry or concern that Ironwood's semblance is getting the better of him. But all anyone ever does is stand there in silence and fear, making it out to seem that Ironwood is just letting the pressure get to him and that he's a force that should be feared, when in reality, he's someone who should be helped. And that's the key problem with the show never addressing his semblance.
I think, though, that this is something, I mean, again, we don't know anything about the show, but, like, I have to keep saying that, but I do think that I think he's a leader. I do think that in a real life situation, like, it wouldn't be normal for people who are being led by a leader to know all the problems that they're dealing with. So, like, you, the viewer, are watching this maybe, like, as if, and you're experiencing it in the same manner as maybe these characters are. And so, like, behind the scenes, you're wishing that you knew that he had this semblance of a sort. But, like, I do think that what it does sound like it does is it brings to light something that actually I think happens in real life, that people have issues that you don't know that they're dealing with, and that can make them behave in a certain way, and people can respond in a way that's helpful or in a way that's not helpful based on the knowledge that they do know, and they just don't know everything, you know. And you know, some people approach things like that and they think, well, I don't know everything, so I'm going to approach this with compassion. And some people go, no, you have no right to behave that way. And so, you know, blah, blah, blah. And I think that there's a balance.
You should be a writer.
No, I should not be a writer. I should not.
It is a fundamental core of what's been driving the plot forward and completely changes the perception of everything once you give it just the slightest amount of thought. Ironwood Semblance also gets rid of some of the general beliefs you'd expect the character to have and how they go about representing it. For example, Ironwood isn't too dissimilar from another character Rooster Teeth has created that perhaps a lot of you may be familiar with, the director from Red vs. Blue. Take a listen to this line and tell me if it doesn't sound a tad similar.
Dear Chairman, I don't give a damn about your committee and its opinions of my work. Have you forgotten, sir, we were at war? A fight with an alien race for the very survival of our species? I feel I must remind you that it is an undeniable, and may I say a fundamental quality of man, that when faced with extinction, every alternative is preferable.
Yeah, strikingly, it's almost the exact situation and outlook Ironwood has. But you know what the key difference here is? In the director's case, it's his philosophy that's allowing him to pursue the extreme lengths he's willing to go. He's calm, he sounds rational as though it's something he's contemplated for a long time. He has made a choice he can justify and stand behind. Whereas Ironwood seems like he's flying by the seat of his pants. The same philosophy can still hold true, however it's hampered by his semblance pushing him to absurd amounts of extreme. How far would Ironwood have been willing to go without his semblance, and how far is his semblance going to keep pushing him? The barometer for where Ironwood ends and his semblance begins is unclear, so while a justifiable any alternative is preferable over extinction may be within him naturally, possibly nuking a city may be a bit far for normal Ironwood. You see, his semblance just gets rid of the interesting parts of what makes humans humans. The decisions we make, the justifications for why we make them. And his semblance gets rid of all that nuance. I get that you want to play on his Tin Man without a heart shtick, but at some point you just have to say fuck it and create your own character. Because every single fairy tale character wasn't meant to be thrown into the same cinematic universe. Ironwood Semblance is an absolutely terrible addition, arguably one of the worst in the show's history, and everyone would have been better off without it ever being included. That way his ideas would seem more like that of philosophy, the cool stuff he does wouldn't seem to get minimized by some special ability, and the writers wouldn't look like they don't understand how their own characters work. And Team RWBY would have done one less unlikable thing, and God knows they need as many of them as they can get. Ironwood is a character who it should feel like he needs help, but instead it feels like he's more of a character who's just going to get killed. And lastly, I leave you off with one final Red vs. Blue quote, written by the same guy who didn't understand Ironwood Semblance and the voice of Ruby Rose.
When you spend every day fighting a war, you learn to demonize your attackers. To you, they're evil, they're subhuman. Because if they weren't, then what would that make you?
Thank you guys for hanging out with us. That's a new one for us, so thanks for sharing that. If you guys want to request your own reaction video, look for this link in the description box below. I think that's it. Stay tuned, stay positive.
Love you guys so much.
See you next time.
See you next time.
Bye.
Bye.
I just wanna bang my leg.